You've heard the expression, don't miss the forest for the trees. Well, the procrastinators seize the forest, and that's their problem. They go, oh my God, I've got all this to cut down. Holy Moses. All right, and you just got to remind them to cut down one tree at a time.
From Weill Cornell Medicine in New York City, this is Your Brain with Dr. Phil Stieg. Internationally renowned scientist and researcher, Dr. Stieg is Neurosurgeon-in-Chief of New York Presbyterian Weill Cornell Medical Center. This week, Dr. Stieg and his guest explore procrastination.
Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Joseph Ferrari, a distinguished professor of psychology at DePaul University in Chicago. Dr. Ferrari is internationally recognized for his extensive research and books on chronic procrastination, delving into its causes, consequences, and potential remedies. Beyond his academic pursuits, Dr. Ferrari serves as a permanent deacon in the Catholic faith within the Diocese of Joliet, Illinois. His multifaceted career offers a unique perspective on human behavior, motivation, and personal development. Today, we will speak with him about the surprising science behind procrastination and explore why we do it even when we know better. Joe, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for showing up on time. I appreciate this.
Part of being a neurosurgeon. So let's just really start at the beginning. When I was reading your book, I felt like, oh my God, I have the disease. I'm a procrastinator. But then I think I quickly realized that I'm just overextended. So can you tell us all what it really means to be someone who procrastinates, but more importantly, who really meets that definition of being a chronic, or maybe I would call it a pathologic procrastinator?
Everybody, lots of people think they're procrastinators. And I like to say everyone procrastinates, but not everyone is a procrastinator. What I've found over the years is that 20% of men and women, there's no significant gender difference, are chronic procrastinators, which mean they delay, they postpone, they wait at home, at school, at work, in relationships. They're going to RSVP late. They'll wait till the gauge goes on empty before they get more gas. They get the third bill before they pay it. So over the years, I've modified the definition that I've used. My first book was out in 95, called Procrastination and Task Avoidance. And we defined it back then as to purposely delay the start or completion of a task and feeling uncomfortable about it. In 2010, I kind of expanded that to say to intentionally delay a target task that's irrational. It makes no sense to delay, and it prevents us from reaching our goals. And people feel uncomfortable. So there's a sense of discomfort, psychological discomfort, if you would, with that. And it's maladaptive lifestyle.
One of the things I was interested in towards the end of the book, however, you also noted that in academics, I thought the number was 70% have the tendency to procrastinate.
Sure. That's right. Remember what I said initially, everybody procrastinates, but not everyone's a procrastinator. So the data shows that 70% of college students, and I've done some research in this and so have others, are academic procrastinators. So they'll delay studying, reading, writing a term paper, coming for a mentor. But gee, if there's a free keg of beer in the dorm, they're there. If a certain artist they like is giving a free concert for the first 50 people, they're there. So they're not procrastinators. They're just procrastinating. We all may have a task that we put off, but just because you put off a task doesn't mean you're a procrastinator. And going back to that definition, it's not just delaying. If I'm stuck on the tarmac and I can't fly and my plane is 4 hours delayed, well, I didn't procrastinate. I was delayed. Waiting is not the same. Postponing is not the same. It's sort of a tipping point that puts us into procrastination versus just delaying.
I thought one of the key points that I hope you can make and elaborate upon is the fact that, procrastination is not about time management. It's more about self-sabotage. And, number one, who wants to self-sabotage willingly? How does that come about?
So 2 major meta-analyses were done. And both of these found that time management is the least effective intervention. Training chronic procrastinators, the 20%, to manage their time isn't going to work, because there's an expression I like to say: you can't control the wind, you can only adjust your sails. Life is going to give you winds. That isn't the issue. The question is, how do I handle it? I can't manage time. I only manage myself. It's ineffective to say time management. But remember, procs, I called them procs, that 20%, are good excuse makers. They're going to be listening to this, and they're going to engage, as I call in the book, the but however. I could have done that, but, well, that's interesting. Ferrari says, however, for me, because it's never their fault. The chronic procrastinator always has an excuse. And that's part of the issue. The question is, do we call them out?
What would you say are the root causes of pathologic procrastination?
I say it's learned. We learn to be this way. And where we learn, we begin in the household. We begin with our parents. And so you look at what were the roots, what were the dynamics that were going on in the household. And then how has the person learned to adjust? How as a culture have we allowed people to get away, quote unquote, get away with procrastinating? Have we not wanted to make them feel bad by saying this was the deadline and you missed it? Sorry, you're a neurosurgeon. I hope you're on time. I don't want you to show up 3 days later and say, I couldn't get there. Sorry. And I'm dead. You want the person to meet deadlines in life. So it's a gradual growth, and it's also cultural, societal. So where does it come from? Man, that's a complicated question. Beginning in the home, beginning in the culture, beginning in our lifestyle, our ability to allow people to miss without consequences deadlines, without rewarding them for meeting the deadlines when they do, when they get them done earlier. It's complicated. And there's no one theory. That's part of the problem with this topic. There's no one theory on what is the actual cause. Procrastinators don't like other procrastinators, which is very fascinating. Because when we ask them to evaluate what they think of people who, in a certain scenario of procrastination, they rate them more negatively than non-procrastinators.
You also say that procrastinators want to be liked.
Yes.
And that strikes me as kind of irrational.
Because if I never finish, you can never judge my skill. I can always tell you, I'm good at it. See, there's this fear. I don't want to hand it in yet till it's perfect. Remember, they're good excuse makers. Oh, no, it's not quite perfect yet, so I'm not going to give it to you till it's done. All right? If I never finish, I can never fail. Okay? But I can also never succeed, because if I fail, I'll look bad. But what if the fear of success? What if I do well? Oh, you might expect more from me the next time. So I'm just going to delay. So no responsibilities are placed on me. So I don't have to get that legal brief in on time. You won't give me a bigger case to work on next time. So the person is not held accountable for those kinds of things.
In your book, you talk about the concept of reactance as a source of procrastination. What actually do you mean?
Psychological reactance. That's a really interesting concept, been around since the 60s. Reactance is this concept of people are willing to do something, going to do something, but once you tell them they have to do it, then they say, oh yeah? I'm not going to do that. I'm a native New Yorker, if you couldn't tell, from Brooklyn, and we call it the oh yeah effect. Oh yeah? I would have done that, but because you tell me I have to, forget it. I ain't going to do it. Forget about it. So that's reactance. I think of COVID with the masks. All right, people were reacting against that. So could procrastination be something that is linked to a reactance effect? You tell me I have to do this. This is due by this date. Just for that, I won't. And the answer is, yeah, there is some tendency to do that.
What are some of the common myths regarding procrastination?
Some people would like to say, I work best under pressure. Oh, if I only waited till the last minute, gets me going, well, we brought them into the lab and we found they don't do better under pressure. They think they do better. They say they do better compared to other people, but their performance under time pressure, when they had limited time, is that they tend to do worse. I call those people the arousal procrastinators, the people that are waiting for that thrill at that last minute. One of the myths that I hear by people is technology today makes it easier to procrastinate. I'll answer that by giving a quick story. In 2006, a reporter from Connecticut calls me and says, Dr. Ferrari, what do you think about the snooze button on alarm clocks? The first snooze button was available in 1956, and it's 50 years old having it. And I thought about, that's really interesting. That's right. You press this button and you keep gaining more and more time. So you can see how the snooze button, it was thing. But then I thought about it even more, and I began to say, well, 1885 was the automobile. There was a time you'd have to get your horse and buggy ready and get it all fed and linked up before you went to see your friend 3 miles down the road. Now you have this thing called the horseless carriage. You could go right away. So there's always been technology. The question isn't, technology doesn't make us procrastinate, right? It's how we use it or don't use it or misuse it that leads to procrastination. It's not technology. The third myth is people say, oh, Ferrari, you don't get it. Our lives are busier today. We have so much more to do and demands on our time. Well, what a major insult that is to our ancestors. Our ancestors had to get up early, make sure the fields were plowed, make sure the water was brought in, fed the animals, canned the goods, cleaned the house. Their life was busier. They got it done. But again, as human beings, we're great excuse makers. There's always a reason why. The problem is we don't reward the early bird catching the worm. I believe we punish for being late, but we don't reward for being early. And that's the problem. We need to reward for being early.
No one knows when the first procrastinator said, "I'll do this tomorrow." But postponing important tasks has been part of human behavior for thousands of years. The term procrastinate may have been coined as early as the 1st century BCE by the Roman philosopher Cicero, who called the practice loathsome. Yet procrastination isn't always bad. It produced one of the most famous paintings of all time, the Mona Lisa. Renaissance artist Leonardo da Vinci was renowned as a gifted painter, sculptor, and inventor, but throughout his career he struggled to meet deadlines and often neglected his projects to the frustration of his wealthy patrons. Despite Da Vinci's genius, he gained a reputation for being unreliable and easily distracted. One project Da Vinci failed to deliver on time was the Mona Lisa, which he began in 1503. Da Vinci delayed its delivery, dragging out most of the work over the first few years, then spending over a decade intermittently adding finishing touches. Some art historians say that he never actually completed the portrait. Da Vinci's on-again, off-again work on the Mona Lisa paid off. It added depth, color, and dimension, establishing the painting as an important work of art. But when 16th century painter and art historian Giorgio Vasari wrote about the portrait, he said that the great artist left it unfinished. The background on the painting's left side appears to have fewer layers than the right side, suggesting that there was more work to be done. Some observers believe that a shape in the background resembling a road is in fact an incomplete foundation for details that Da Vinci didn't get around to adding. Da Vinci was never paid for the Mona Lisa, and it remained in his studio until he died in 1519. Vasari, who was Da Vinci's first biographer, wrote that the artist regretted his tendency to procrastinate, and that he died believing that he had offended God and mankind in not having worked at his art as he should have done. But Vasari also regarded Da Vinci's procrastination with sympathy and respect. He said, "It was because of his profound knowledge of painting that Leonardo started so many things without finishing them. He was convinced that his hands, for all their skill, could never perfectly express the subtle and wonderful ideas of his imagination."
Earlier, you said that procrastination is a learned behavior. Does that mean it can be unlearned?
Yeah, I'm an operant kind of guy. That means I based on Skinnerian views of learning, and that we learn to be who we are. That means we can unlearn to be this way. There's no gene for procrastination. There's nothing genetic this way. If parents are procrastinators, there's nothing genetic that the kid will carry. What causes people to become procrastinators, and let me ask you this question, Phil, who do you think causes kids to become procrastinators? Mothers or fathers? Who has the greater impact?
Boy or girl child?
Irrelevant.
Irrelevant? That's right. Mothers.
Everybody blames mothers, right? We always blame it's mommy's fault. No, this time it's dad. Procrastinators report more conflict, a shallower relationship, a more strained relationship with their fathers than their mothers. Huh. All right. So, and the part 2 of this story that we found in the research was, well, what if you don't have a father, right? And if you're raised by your mother, as many single parents may happen, then we find it's not so much the father, but the authoritarian parenting style. Now, that's the cold, demanding parent who says, as long as you live under this roof, you do what I say. I don't want to hear any lip. This is what you do. Well, that causes a child to grow up, to withdraw, to take their time, and interesting dynamic. And the mother tends to, if she is present when the father is this way, tends to be indecisive. So the kid goes running to mother and says, Mom, Dad wants me to do this. And what does she say? Well, honey, I don't know what to say. He is your dad. So you have a very interesting family dynamic there. So you learn it. And that means you can unlearn it. There's a lot of books out there that take this time management approach. And you're going to put that book down if you finish it. And you're going to say, that was nice, but it doesn't fit for me. My book is called Still Procrastinating because there's something more to this. Why are you avoiding the task? Why are you postponing it? What would happen if you fail? You see, psychologists have shown that the most adjusted individual, the happiest individual, is someone who succeeds 85% of the time, but fails 15%. Now, we live in a culture that says you've got to be perfect, should always succeed, got to be 100%. But no, the most adjusted person is someone who also fails a little bit. So as I tell people, you will fail in life. That's not the question. The question is, how did you rise? Your knees are made to go down, but your knees are also made to bring you back up.
You referred to earlier the perfectionist trap. I wanted to get into that. If you are a procrastinator and you use the perfectionist angle, how do you break out of that? What do you do?
Remember, you're not going to be perfect. Nobody is perfect.
That sounds easier said than done.
I know it is. But for some of your listeners, they may get comfort in understanding. You and I are not going to be perfect. You and I are going to fail in life. And that's not the issue. The issue is, how do we adjust to that? How do we learn from that? How do we move forward? We can't control the wind, as I said. We can adjust how we sail. And as the Japanese say, if there's no wind, then row. Just keep moving, all right? Life is not about me. Life is about we. As a community psychologist, I'm interested in understanding, what is that sense of community that we form? Yeah. How is that sense of belonging that occurs?
What are your thoughts about the Nike ad, just do it? How do we drive that home to people? Just take a chance, just do it.
Well, again, now you're looking for some of the cures, and the cures would tell you to go slowly and build success, small wins, as we might call it. Don't bail people out. Something we don't sometimes think about in procrastination is that people will bail us out, will do things for us. It reminds me of the butterfly and the story of the boy with the butterfly. This little boy is given this cocoon, and in it is a butterfly, and he sees it trying to get out. And it's struggling. It's really not having a good time getting out. So what does the boy do? He breaks it open. And the butterfly flies. And then the butterfly dies. We have to struggle sometimes in life. You have to sometimes not get hurt, but you have to fail, You have to sometimes struggle, and because it's out of that struggle. So I would tell people, go slowly. You're going to fail, all right? But you have to have more wins than failures. If you succeed 8 out of 10 times, that's good. But there's going to be the 2 that you fail. So we can't always bail people out. Let people fail a little bit.
So you ascribe to the expression, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger?
Perhaps. As a community psychologist, we're interested in the topic of prevention. And procrastination, even though we think of it as individual differences, is kind of related to prevention if you think about it. What we're asking people to do is prevent problems before they escalate. Don't procrastinate and let the problem escalate. And don't keep bailing people out.
For the individual that knows they're suffering from chronic procrastination, what can they do?
Sure. First, you got to identify, am I part of the 80% who put off a task? Or is this chronic? If it's the 80%, then we can talk about some of these time management, some of these techniques, these baby steps. But if you're part of the 20%, which again is the person who delays in home, at school, in relationships, there's always a reason why. You know they're never going to get you the birthday card on time. You know they're going to wait and miss events. They're never going to go to the doctor's appointment until the pain is really bad. If you're part of the 20%, you need CBT. You need cognitive behavior therapy. You need a good professional who will change the way you think, cognitive, and the way you act, behavioral. All right? Don't have to go to some Freudian who tells you, oh, that's what daddy did and mommy did. That's nice, but insight alone doesn't always cure, so to speak. You need to learn new skills. You need to learn new ways to think and how to respond. So if you're that 20%, and I get messages from them and they give me the long story, it's a sad story about their life, all the misses that they had, and they could have had this and they missed that. You need a good CBT person. Where would I find one? I'm a fan of clinical psychologists, PhDs, and I would say you go to a mental health center in your area, but make sure they understand that this is not a time management issue. If you're part of the 80%, where it's a task that you put off, well, then you got to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Is it the task is unpleasant, aversive? Is it that I fear success, fear of failure? Is there ways can I commit to the change? No one's going to change. And I know this from my years of NIH grants on addiction. You can't get people to change, to recover, if they don't commit to it. A person has to truly bottom out. And sometimes that means you let them fail. All right. And then you commit to change and then identify which kind and then go very slowly. Again, being very behavioral in this. Give observable, specific, small steps. What can I see as the change? And how do I specifically move forward this way? And what are the small steps? You've heard the expression, don't miss the forest for the trees. Well, the procrastinator sees the forest, and that's their problem. They go, oh my God, I've got all this to cut down. Holy Moses. All right, and you just got to remind them to cut down one tree at a time. If you can't do a tree, give me 3 branches. You can't do 3 branches? Then give me some leaves. Just do it, as you were saying. Not just do it now. Don't be afraid to seek a professional. Clinicians will tell you half the battle is getting the person to come in and say, okay, I need help. I have a quote here I just looked up by President Jimmy Carter, who once said, go out on a limb. See, take the risk, because that's where the fruit is at. We've got to go out and take risks in life. People are afraid to do that.
I was thinking about your quote from Norman Vincent Peale. The really happy people are those who have broken the chains of procrastination, those who find satisfaction in doing the job at hand. They're full of eagerness, zest, productivity. You can be too. Right?
Yep. Yeah. Again, leave a legacy, make the world better because you were here. You did something. You're doing that with your podcast, Phil. Even if just one person is better off from having heard something you said at some point, you've made a difference. You've left a legacy. And isn't that great? Isn't that what we're all called to do?
We need to motivate more people to want to do that. Dr. Joseph Ferrari, it's been an intriguing time talking with you about procrastination. Thank you for helping define what it is and showing us that it is possible to learn to break the chains of procrastination and just do it.
Thank you so much for having me here. And again, final word for your listeners, just do it now. Don't worry about failure.
Yep.
This Is Your Brain with Dr. Phil Stieg is produced for the Weill Cornell Medicine Department of Neurosurgery by the Really Interesting Picture Company. The episode producers are Hildy Rubin and Liz Witham. The series is directed and edited by Tom Veltri, with music by Lenny Williams. The announcer is Mindy Weisberger. For more information, visit our website at thisisyourbrain.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and be sure to follow Dr. Stieg on Facebook at This Is Your Brain.